Okay, we're going to go through the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, cave number 2 of the Dead Sea Scrolls. We're going to go one by one through the scrolls that I could find dealing with the 5 books of Moses, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, and we'll see how accurate the Dead Sea Scrolls and how much they match the correct Torah and what's different, right? They're 2,000 years old. And you can watch a video summary or the introduction or whatever it is. You can search for it or subscribe and I'll put it up. Obviously, let me know if you think there's any mistakes here. But here's how the scrolls will look usually when pictured, right? Sometimes a little hard to read. So usually I'll be using the infrared if I didn't mention that before. This one is probably one of the more difficult pieces of parchment, I guess, in Cave 2. Now, this is the beginning of Shmais. And here it says Yanu, and it should say, I'll just read the word. It says Yanu oisam chen yirbu v'chen yishritzu, right? That the Egyptians made their life difficult and they multiplied. V'chen yishritzu, they swarmed, they multiplied again. Now it should say Yanu oisoi, singular, right? They cause suffering to him, meaning the Jewish people as one unit, singular. And sometimes you have Bnei Yisrael described as one unit. And it should say chen yirbeh, because we're singular, right? He multiplied, or the Jewish people, I should say, not he. But the Jewish people multiplied as a singular unit, not chen yirbu, but instead of chen yirbeh, right? The underlined hey here means that's what what should be written but is missing, and the vav is crossed out. V'chein, it should say yifroitz, that they breached, right? That there were so many that they like broke out. Instead it says yishritzu, swarming. Now it's the same idea, but that's quite a few differences, right? Different word, different letters, and that's a big deal. Even if it is the same meaning and it wouldn't really change anything, but as right, someone who believes the Torah is from Hashem and the Jewish people are trying to keep it exactly word for word and letter for letter the exact same, and we're very careful, that can be bothersome, even though it won't change any halacha and it won't change the meaning. But, the Torah is made up, is very holy, so we don't want even the slightest change. This is very important. Okay, so that's why it's a big deal, but we'll see. It gets a little bit worse, but not much. And I'll explain why the Sefer made these mistakes. All right, so now it says, V'yavdu Mitzrayim, the Egyptians made them work, and the next line, okay, Avoida Kasha, B'cheim Levenim, right, difficult work, they have to make the bricks, Avoida Samashera, Avdu Behem Bafarach, work that they work them Bafarach, like a difficult work, right, really pushing them. And then finally it ends off Yakutsu Mitzrayim Mipnei Yisrael, shouldn't say Mitzrayim, that the Egyptians were disgusted because of the Jewish people. And this is one of the bigger mistakes. Why? Not because of the word Mitzrayim, but in fact because this verse does not even belong here. It belongs at the end of this verse. And this is the end, Mipnei Bnei Yisrael. Now you see the other Yisrael seems to be here. So what happened here? Did they write the same verse twice? What's going on? So I have a theory how the Sefer made so many mistakes. And it's just because of one mistake caused avalanche. So first of all, the word Yishritzu actually does appear in the Torah. And it appears with Yirbu, right? In verse 7. 5 verses before this is V'yishritzu v'yirbu, that it mentions the Jewish people multiplying. And so really what's happening here is the Sefer's doing it from memory. And he wrote V'chein Yirbu, right? They multiply. And he knows Yirbu and Yishritzu are supposed to go together. So that's what he did. That's what he wrote. He says, Chen Yirbu v'chen Yishritzu. That's what he did. Now the problem is, of course, it should have been Chen Yirbeh, right? If it would have been Yirbeh, maybe the Sefer would not have made this mistake. He would have remembered it. Yirbeh ve'yishritza, no, it doesn't sound right, or whatever he would have thought. Yishritza, that doesn't sound right. And maybe he wouldn't have made the mistake. So why did he make the mistake Yirbu instead of Yirbeh? Only because he didn't write Yanu Oisoi, right? In the singular. Instead, once he wrote plural Oisam, then it has to be Chen Yirbu, right? That's just logical. So, and then once you have Yirbu, then you're going to have Yishritzu, because that's the verse 7, right? So you can see how these mistakes add up from one little mistake. And that's why when we're going to see that the Torah at the Dead Sea Scrolls matches so well, even when there's a mistake, it's very impressive. It's very impressive to say from that when they make a mistake, things don't get off the rails. And this is probably one of the bigger examples of that, by the way. And so what happened, I'm guessing, is the end of the verse didn't end with V'yakutsu Mitzrayim, V'yakutsu Mipnei Bnei Yisrael. But the Sefer knew he had to put that verse, so he put it in over here. Yeah, it must go here, right? He knows it's here. And so he puts it in over here because that's now not just when he remembers, but that's the most logical spot maybe. Also, what's very, very possible is that he just wrote the verse twice and he made a mistake, right? Because we have the end of the verse, Yisrael, over here, right? Via Kutsu Yisrael. We have that Yisrael. So very possible that, and that's the problem. When we're dealing with these small fragments, how do you know exactly what was the mistake? How do you know exactly what happened? That's the problem. We don't know. If we saw the whole thing, then we would know, did he actually write this verse twice? Or did he write a different verse because he went off the rails? It's so hard to tell. Now, obviously, the word Mitzrayim is added in here. It makes a lot of sense. Why? Because if it was in the first verse, right over here on our page, that there it's talking about the Egyptians. So obviously, the Egyptians are discussed. Here, where maybe the subject matter of the previous part of the verse, or maybe he only wrote this part of the verse. Once you're saying via kutsu that they were discussed, who is discussed? Now you have to say Mitzrayim. So it makes sense. Once you're making this mistake, now you're going to even make this mistake as well. So these mistakes really easily pile up. Now, how do you know that we could actually analyze the text, and you could probably demonstrate why it makes sense that it should be singular and not repeating your beve. Okay, we could probably go through that. But luckily or unluckily, the unlucky reason, I went through the whole Dead Sea Scrolls looking for everything about Chumash, and now I'm coming back to record it. So the lucky thing about that is I can find pieces from other places in the Dead Sea Scrolls that talk about our topic. And do they match the Dead Sea Scrolls other places, or do they match our Torah? Meaning, was this a mistake of one sofer, or is this what they were trying to do on a repeated basis exactly? Now, just because you have multiple versions doesn't really mean that they were trying to do it, right? Maybe someone just looked at someone else in the Dead Sea Scrolls, at his friend's scroll and copied that. So it doesn't disprove anything. But if it matches the Torah, which this one does, then it shows that presumably, just like I explained how the mistake happened, and that would be good enough for me, I think, and for most people to understand, okay, so that's a mistake, and that's how we can explain how the mistake happened. And it's very simple, but here it's even better because we have one that matches our Torah, right? So the same section in Cave 4, right? You can see over here, by the way, Cave 4, 4Q1, if you want to look it up, it says Chen Yir Be, not Yir Bu, and it says V'chein Yifroitz, that they breached, not Yishritzu. And here it says via kutsu. So now we know that it's actually continuing with the verse over here. And they added the extra vav. That's non-consequential. That's just vowels, just like you have the 3 dots over here. And it would be pronounced via kutsu the same with this or not. It doesn't change the meaning, doesn't change the word. It just changes this additional optional letter, I suppose. And even nowadays in Eretz Yisrael, you'll probably find some signs which add these kinds of optional letters and some that maybe don't. So that's kind of one of those normal things in Hebrew. Okay, now we have another one from the Cave 2. And how do I find where these are in the Torah? Sometimes very easy, right? Ramses, right, from Ramses. So that's very easy to find. That's very unique in the Torah. So that's what, you just have to now find that one word instead of saying V'yomer Moshe, right, that Moshe spoke. Okay, anyway, V'yitzu b'nei Yisrael from Ramses Sukkosa. They left from Ramses to go to Sukkosa. Shmois Yud Beis Lamed Zayin, right, 1237. And now going back, we can see Yachametz Misarois Sam Tzururois, right, that their bread didn't leaven. V'yishol Mitzrayim Klei Kesef, right, they asked from the Egyptians vessels of silver. V'tzoinu Bakar Mikne Kaved Mayon, right, they have pretty much lots of a large flock, right, sheep and cattle, a flock that's very large. Matzahs, they'll have matzah. Why? Ki loy chametz, didn't leaven. Kigarshu, Mitzrayim, right, they left, kicked out of Mitzrayim. They were rushed out of Mitzrayim, I guess maybe is the right word. And here we're going to have another mistake. Very understandable how this mistake happens, right? It says Mimitzrayim, and here it says Garshum, right? It's an endamem, right? You can see over here, this is the way it should be. We should have 2 of these mems right here. Instead, we have an endamem, like the mem was part of Garshum. So how did this happen? Now, we don't have a space here, right? So you can see very quickly how this can happen. And even over here, you can see Klei Kesef, right? There's no space here. You can start to see sometimes there's a nice space, like over here, we don't have a space. Ki Garshu, right? We don't have that space over here. We don't have large spaces. B'nei Yisrael, right? We're not going to have that space over here. So it's very possible that, in fact, the cipher made a mistake. And this was really supposed to, and maybe just in terms of writing the mem, he meant to write it this way and he wrote it this way. And he knows it's Ki Garshu Mimitzrayim, right? He knows that. Or maybe he's doing it from memory. And when you do it from memory, sometimes what a cipher will do to not make a mistake, or this is what they should do, is they say letter by letter, right? They'll say Gimel, Resh, Shin, Vav, Mem, Mem. And when he's writing that Mem, maybe he thought it was an endamem. right? So he's made a mistake. So this is a very tiny mistake. I suppose it might change the meaning, but all the letters are the exact same. It's just because he made an end mem, now the person might read it Gershum. Now they don't have to. They might not. But yeah, clearly the Sofer made a mistake by putting that little bit of extra ink here and not writing it properly. And Gershum doesn't really make sense, but like I said, maybe it's an extra letter, right? The optional letter. Is it Gerushim? No, I think it's like I said, that it's Ki Gershum Mitzrayim. Now you can see from this other piece, this is not from the Torah, but it is from Cave 2, so you can look it up if you want. But you can see this mem is open, right? This mem is an end of mem. It should be the end of a mem, but it's also open. It shouldn't be. This mem is open even more than this one, right? And this one is closed because of the other letter, presumably. And this end of mem, which is like this one, but this one's closed. So you see, Soifrim have trouble with these mems, I suppose, right? Writing letters, it's hard. You're writing a lot. It's very difficult. Now here, by the way, on this piece, you can see there's lots of spaces, nice big spaces, almost the size of a letter, which you didn't really have in the other one necessarily. So you can see maybe the other one was rushing a little bit more, or maybe wasn't as good of a saver. You can make those decisions if you want, but I think it's a very easy mistake. It's I don't want to say non-consequential, but you can understand how the mistake was made. Just two mems in a row, and you thought that it was the wrong kind of mem. All right, now we have Shmois Yud Aleph, V'yarmer Moshe Koi, right? This is talking about the Chatzos Halayla, that Hashem is going to kill the firstborn at Chatzos Halayla. And so Moshe is making this announcement of what's going to happen. But the Sefer here thinks that Moshe is going to speak to Paro, which is happening throughout the Parsha. So it's, once again, a very logical mistake that a Sefer will make from memory, right? That the firstborn is going to die, and Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about what's going to happen. And so he must be speaking to Paro. And the rest is correct. Mitzrayim meis kol bochor ad bochor shivcha, right? From the firstborn of even the maidservant. Gedoyle bochor la'aretz, bochol eretz. Sorry, here, gedoyle, it's great in all the land. So the vav here, once again, it's malay and chaser. Once again, doesn't really matter. This is the way, this little dot over here, that's the way it's supposed to be read. So it's really not going to change anything. Ulachol b'nei Yisrael, right? So all of that is really correct. Now here we have, I think they call it paleo script, but what Jews will call ivris. Instead of ashuris, which is what we regularly read, this is ivris. So this is the Shmois Yud Aleph, and this is actually talking about kashrus. So once again, you find a certain spot, Yechabes Bagadav. I think it's talking about kashrus. Let's see. He's going to wash his clothing. Parsa, right? Split two, v'shaisas, right? It chooses kad, hanoigea behem, right? Someone who touches them. Tmeim, they are impure, presumably touching the dead carcass. Haim. So yeah, everything checks out. Now, once again, there's an extra vav here. It should read hanoigea. With the vav, it still reads hanoigea. Same exact word, but it's an extra vav, optional extra vav. And here, presumably, we have an extra optional yud, which may be less common, but I assume that's what's going on here. Now we have an extra, not optional, saf, right? It says parsa v'shoisas instead of v'shesa. Should say v'shesa. And we'll look right now, right? This is what it should say. Kol mafreses parsa, anything that has split hooves. V'shoisas shesa, and that chews its cud. Or sorry, that's what it does say. This is the verse of what it does say, right? Because it's v'shosas, right? And it chews its cud. So just lining this up, the extra yud mafreses goes in here, I suppose. Parsa v'shosas shesa. Okay, fine, but that's not the verse. Really, it should be l'chol behema asher hi mafreses parsa v'shesa. Right, so that's really what it should be. So once again, you have the extra yud, not a big deal. And obviously, you can see mafreses parsa v'shoisa shesa. Right, you can see how once again, Sofer can very easily make this mistake. It's the Chumash, especially odd words like this, are not commonly used. So when they're used, right, you might trigger your memory to the other verse. Right, so presumably that's what happened here. Once again, it's not gonna, as far as I can tell, change the meaning in any serious way at all. But all of these things are important. That's why I'm documenting them, how, and the rest of it was was perfect. But, okay, this is Bamidbar Gimel Nun Aleph, right? As Moshe, once again, we don't have the space here, but that's what's going on. Es Roish, and the Shem's name, that's fine. Es Roish Mishpachisam, the heads of the families, Labase, U Ma'ale, and you can see the Lamed over here, right? Vav Mem Ayin, and the Lamed over here, perfect. Ba, so Mishpachisam, once again, extra letter, optional, but this is perfect. And we only have a scrap piece, and that's one of the beautiful things, Sefer Torah, this matches the Sefer Torah so well that even with only so few words, right, just the pieces of words coming together, and you can figure out everything that's written here and where it is in the Torah, because it's so it matches so perfectly. And okay, so that's it for the Cave 2, for very few pieces from the Chumash. We're going to go through, I don't know if there is any in Cave 3, but Cave 4, there's a ton. And we're going to go one by one. It might go a little bit slower because I'm not going to be able to remember all the different pieces. I'm going to have to jog my memory maybe. But anyway, pay attention. If you want, you can listen to each exact one. If you want to see each scroll, we'll probably go a little bit faster. Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe if you're interested. And let me know if you want to know anything else.